I rented my house to a recent graduate from a top university, and on the night she moved in, she sent me a photo at midnight. In the picture, a single hair lay curled up in the corner of the room. Landlord, this isn't my hair. It must be DNA from the previous tenant. Can you please come clean it up? I stared at the message for a few seconds, unsure how to even respond. In the end, I told her politely to handle it herself. 30 minutes later, another message popped up, this time a photo of some device reading from the kitchen faucet. Result: 158. That's above the normal level. Prolonged consumption could damage kidney function. Please install a water filter tomorrow. That was the final straw. I blocked her number right away, assuming that would be the end of it. But the next day, a package showed up at my door. Inside was a 30-page document titled, Report on Potential Environmental Safety Hazards of the Residents, along with an official-looking lawyer's letter. My phone rang just as I finished reading the title page. Did you receive it? Came her voice, calm, steady, with a hint of arrogance. Holding the letter tightly, I felt the paper's edge cut into my palm. Skylar Griffin, what on earth are you trying to pull? Nothing dramatic, she said lightly. Ms. Murphy, I'm simply protecting my tenant rights as stated by law. You sent a 30-page report and hired a lawyer over one strand of hair and tap water? I asked, completely dumbfounded. It's not a strand of hair, she corrected me evenly. It's an unidentified biological sample. And it's not just the tap water. The total dissolved solids exceed safe limits, meaning long-term use could cause health problems. She paused for a moment before continuing. Since this is your first violation, I'll be lenient. Refund the rent and deposit, pay compensation for emotional distress, and renovate the entire property according to my report within 3 days. Then I'll consider withdrawing the lawsuit. I laughed in disbelief. And if I refuse? Then we'll see each other in court, she said. Just a heads up, my lawyer plans to apply for a freeze on your property and bank accounts. Also, I'll distribute my full report to every resident in the building, so everyone knows they're living in a place filled with DNA traces and heavy metal contamination. With that, she hung up. For a few seconds, all I could hear was the empty hum of the disconnected call. In all my 30 years, I had never encountered anyone so absurd. When I finally opened the PDF she'd emailed, titled Residential Safety and Health Risk Assessment Report, I almost laughed out loud. If I had known better, I would have thought it was an official government research paper. The contents were outrageous. Risk number 1. The bedroom floor tilts by 0.01 degrees, potentially causing long-term spinal misalignment. Risk number 2. Indoor PM 2.5 levels measure 15, technically within national standards, but higher than in the Swiss Alps. Installing an upgraded ventilation system is advised. Risk number 3. The Wi-Fi router's nighttime radiation exceeds the safe range for pregnant women and infants by 0.001%, possibly disrupting sleep and brain development. Each entry included graphs, charts, and references from both local and international research journals. I exhaled slowly and grabbed my phone. Manager Moore? I said, have you met the new tenant in my apartment? Miles Moore's tone over the phone was hard to describe. Director Murphy, are you talking about that Ms. Griffin? He hesitated, then continued. She came by earlier today, brought a lawyer and a few people wearing lab coats. They were collecting water, air, and soil samples from the neighborhood's public areas. Apparently, they're preparing a health risk assessment report for the entire residential complex. The owner's group chat is blowing up right now. For a moment, I was completely speechless. This wasn't just eccentric behavior anymore. It was full-blown insanity. Director Murphy, what should we do about this? I pinched the bridge of my nose. Don't worry, I'll handle it. After ending the call, I sent Skylar a message. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., I'll bring my lawyer. We'll talk face-to-face. Her reply came instantly. Please arrive on time. And I hope your lawyer is as competent as mine. Reading that last line, as competent as mine, made me want to throw my phone across the room. The next morning, I didn't bother bringing a lawyer. I went alone to the apartment I had rented out. When the door opened, Skylar stood there in a crisp white dress, her gold-rimmed glasses glinting under the light. She looked refined, composed, and irritatingly confident. Behind her stood the same lawyer who had threatened me over the phone the day before. Ms. Murphy, where's your lawyer? Skylar asked, adjusting her glasses as she gave me a quick once-over. To deal with you, I don't need one, I said, stepping inside. The place was spotless. Not just tidy, unnaturally clean like a laboratory. The faint scent of disinfectant hung in the air. The lawyer stepped forward and handed me a folder. Ms. Murphy, this is my client's final proposal. He flipped through the pages. First, a full refund of the deposit and rent for this month, $24,000. Second, compensation for emotional distress, lost wages, and the cost of testing, totaling $100,000. Third, a complete renovation according to this attached list, estimated at $200,000. The total comes to $324,000. If you agree, we can sign the settlement immediately. I took the list and scanned a few lines. Replace all flooring with sterile materials imported from Germany. Install a medical-grade ventilation and purification system from Switzerland. Upgrade all water pipes to 316L stainless steel and add advanced filters. Repaint every wall using zero formaldehyde coatings imported from Finland. A laugh escaped me, dry and sharp. I tossed the list back onto the table. Skylar, do I really look that gullible to you? She walked closer, stopping right in front of me. Her gaze was steady, almost emotionless. Ms. Murphy, I'm only acting within reason, and within the rules. Rules, I repeated. Yes, she said calmly. In today's world, rules are everything. She tapped her temple lightly. And I just happen to understand them better than most. I know how to use them to my advantage. A small, self-satisfied smile appeared on her face. By the way, I should introduce myself properly. I completed both my undergraduate and master's degrees at Vanderbilt University Law School with a focus on economic and procedural law. No matter who you hire, you won't win against me. My advice? Settle and pay what's owed. Otherwise, your property could be frozen, and your name will end up on the National Credit Blacklist. Her lawyer nodded beside her. Ms. Griffin is exceptional. Her report is airtight. You really don't have a case. The two of them stood there, perfectly composed, radiating the smug confidence of people who thought they'd already won. I could only shake my head. It was so absurd it almost made me laugh. Just then, Skylar's phone began to ring. Skylar glanced at the caller ID, and the moment she answered, her voice softened into something sugary sweet. Hi, Mom, she cooed. I've already rented the place. The landlord's a bit slow, but don't worry, I've already had my lawyer send her a letter. No, it's fine. She won't win against me. Soon she'll have to pay up and fix the place exactly how we want it. When you and Dad come over, you'll be moving straight into a freshly renovated home. She hung up, then turned toward me with a smug little smile. Did you hear that? Everything I'm doing is for my parents. I'm such a good daughter. Even the heavens will be on my side. I stood frozen for a few seconds, utterly speechless. So that was her real goal, not justice, not safety. She just wanted me to foot the bill for her parents' new retirement home. Ms. Murphy, the lawyer interrupted politely. Have you come to a decision? I met Skylar's eyes and asked quietly. Let me guess, you've already shared your report in the owner's group chat, haven't you? She gave a light shrug, feigning innocence. I was simply being a responsible resident, she said. People should be aware of health hazards. After all, DNA contamination and heavy metal exposure aren't trivial concerns. Right then, my phone began to vibrate nonstop. Miles, a few neighbors, even the community director, all calling one after another. They demanded explanations, accused me of negligence, asked what kind of house I had rented out. And through it all, Skylar just watched me with a smile, her satisfaction growing by the second. See, she said softly, that's how rules work. Water can float a boat, but it can also drown it. Public opinion is the tide that decides which way it goes. She leaned back against the sofa, one leg crossed over the other, perfectly composed. I'll give you one last chance, she said. Sign the agreement, and we'll still be neighbors. If not, I don't mind going further. Maybe I'll invite a few journalists over and let them write about you. The cruel, irresponsible landlord who ignored her tenants' health and safety. Imagine your name on the front page. Wouldn't that be something? Every word out of her mouth chipped away at what little patience I had left. I stared at her, trying to understand what kind of upbringing could create someone this manipulative and self-satisfied. Slowly, I took out my phone and started recording right in front of her. Skylar, are you absolutely sure you want to go to court over $100,000? I asked. She looked at me like I'd just cracked a joke. Not 100,000, she corrected with mock sympathy. 324,000. Seems math isn't your strong suit, Ms. Murphy. And this isn't about money, anyway. It's about principle. She adjusted her glasses, her gaze turning sharp and cold. Ignorance and arrogance always come with a price. All right then, I said evenly. I stopped the recording and stood up. I've heard your terms. You'll get my response in 3 days. As I turned to leave, her voice followed me, laced with mockery. Trying to stall for time, Ms. Murphy? It's useless. I've already filed a pre-litigation injunction. The court will be in touch soon. I didn't bother replying. Once I stepped out of that suffocating apartment, I took a deep breath. The sunlight outside was blindingly bright, yet somehow it couldn't warm me at all. When I got back to my car, I didn't start it. I just sat there, thinking. Dealing with someone like Skylar wouldn't be easy. She was the kind of person who hid behind the law like armor and manipulated public opinion like a weapon. People like that weren't just troublesome, they were toxic, impossible to reason with, and nearly impossible to beat. If I wanted to deal with Skylar Griffin, I couldn't rely on ordinary methods. People like her thrived on loopholes and manipulation. To win, I needed to find her weakness, something beyond her beloved rules, the single flaw that could shatter everything she built. I didn't drive home that day. Instead, I went straight to my office. Cognitech Technology wasn't just any company. It was one of the leading tech giants in the country. And Luna Murphy, was its founder and CEO. I rarely appeared in public, preferring to stay out of the spotlight. Most employees only saw me during annual meetings or on the cover of internal magazines. So it wasn't surprising that Skylar hadn't recognized me. A soft knock sounded on my office door before my assistant, Violet Webb, stepped in. President Murphy, welcome back, she greeted. I nodded slightly, taking off my coat and settling into the leather chair behind my desk. Bring me the finalist for this quarter's Star of Cognitech program. The Star of Cognitech initiative was our company's elite recruitment program. Each year, we selected fewer than 10 top graduates from prestigious universities worldwide, the best of the best, and trained them to become future executives. Violet handed over the folder. Here's the list, President Murphy. 8 candidates in total, all already interviewed. I opened the file, flipping through the names. Harvard, MIT, Cambridge. Each one an impressive resume on its own. Then my gaze froze on the last name. Skylar Griffin, graduated from Vanderbilt University Law School, bachelor's and master's. Assigned department, Legal Affairs and Risk Control. Employee ID, 10327. I couldn't help but smile. Well, wasn't that poetic? Not only was she one of our incoming recruits, but the lawyer she had hired, from Caldwell Law Firm, worked for one of Cognitech's biggest competitors. So this arrogant little law graduate, who hadn't even officially started yet, had already teamed up with a rival company to sue her own CEO. I picked up my phone and dialed her number. Hello. Her voice carried that same self-assured calm. Ms. Murphy, have you made your decision? Are we settling or not? I told you I'd give you an answer in 3 days. I replied evenly. She chuckled. Changed your mind already? I knew it. People like you can never win against me. Tell you what, she continued smugly. I'll be generous. Bring the signed settlement tomorrow. And remember to be polite. I smiled to myself. Tomorrow at 10, same place, I said slowly. I'll bring the answer you've been waiting for. The next morning, I arrived right on time. Skylar and her lawyer were already there, their smug expressions practically daring me to fight back. Ms. Murphy, looks like you came to your senses, the lawyer said, sliding a pre-drafted settlement across the table. Skylar reclined lazily on the sofa, swirling the water in her glass. Good, she said. Would have saved us both trouble if you'd done this sooner. Go on, sign it. Once you do, you can start renovating right away. Then, as if inspired, she added casually, by the way, my parents are getting old. You might as well hire 2 full-time caregivers for them. I'll send you their salaries monthly, just link your account to my phone. And for me, I'd like a cleaning lady to come by every day. 10 times a day should do. I'll be kind enough to help you make the payments, so connect your highest limit account to my number. She smiled sweetly. Oh, and you should move out of your place soon. My fiancé and I are getting married, and since my parents will be next door, we'll just take over your house. Convenient, right? You're not afraid that I might be your boss? I interrupted quietly. She blinked, then burst into laughter. You? My boss. Her tone was dripping with disdain. Please. Do you even know where I work? Someone like you could never compare to Cognitech Technology. Even the janitors there have more class than you. She gave me one last sneer. Stop dreaming, old woman. You're past your prime. I raised an eyebrow, saying nothing. Instead, I calmly reached into my briefcase, took out a document, and placed it on the table. It was an official employment contract. I tapped the top of the page. Take a look. That's your name, isn't it? Skylar leaned forward. The moment she saw the bold letters spelling out Skylar Griffin, her smile vanished. What is this? She stammered. The lawyer beside her looked over her shoulder, and all the color drained from his face. Leaning back in my chair, I regarded them both with quiet amusement. Skylar Griffin, employee ID 10327, I said smoothly. Welcome to Cognitech Technology. I smiled faintly. And allow me to introduce myself properly this time. I'm Luna Murphy, your direct superior and the CEO of Cognitech. Skylar's face went slack, her eyes widening as if she could not catch a breath. The Caldwell lawyer, who had been so composed a moment before, began scrambling to collect his things, clearly eager to leave. Not so fast, Attorney Alex, I said, stopping him with a calm smile. You, the renowned counsel from Caldwell Law Firm, are backing a suit against your future employer, one of Cognitech's own incoming recruits. I lifted the legal letter from the table and let the room read it along with me. Tell me, is this a personal initiative or Caldwell Law Firm's official position? The name Caldwell seemed to tighten the room. Attorney Alex, isn't Caldwell bidding against us for that industrial park project in the Southern District? Wouldn't this look like corporate interference, or worse, commercial bribery? Cold sweat broke out on Alex's brow. He stammered, President Murphy, this is a misunderstanding, a total misunderstanding. Skylar, suddenly frantic, pointed an accusing finger at him. It was you. You told me the landlord was just an ordinary middle-aged woman, easy to intimidate. You promised the fees would be split, 10% to you, the rest to me. Alex's color drained. That's not true. You came to me, saying you wanted to teach the landlord a lesson. They bickered like two scavengers fighting over scraps, which, to my surprise, was almost comical. I turned back to Skylar, my expression cooling. I read your report, I said slowly. The data is thorough, your logic coherent. You do have talent. Then I shifted, the compliment folding into the threat. But you put that talent to the wrong use. Your probation starts next week, correct? Consider this, your 30-page House Environmental Safety Hazard Report will be entered as your first performance assessment. Her color leached away, her legs trembling as she collapsed onto the sofa, muttering that it could not be true. This can't be real. How could you be the CEO of Cognitech? You must be. Must be what? I asked, amused and steady. Some gullible middle-aged woman you thought you could bully? I stepped closer, looking down at her. The confident prodigy had been reduced, suddenly small and exposed. You have two options, I said, my voice low but carrying across the room. Option 1, I call the police now. You conspired with a rival lawyer to extort me. That is criminal, and it could land you in prison for years. Your Vanderbilt diplomas, your planned career, they all disappear in an instant. Skylar was trembling so hard, she could barely stand upright. The second option, I continued evenly, is to withdraw all your lawsuits immediately and vacate my property today. You'll also issue a public apology, posting it in the community group chat and on every platform where you shared your so-called report. You'll clarify that everything you spread was false, and you'll clear my name. Alex stood frozen beside her, drenched in sweat. He tried to speak, but one look from me silenced him. Of course, I added calmly, we're not quite done yet. I looked back at Skylar and smiled faintly. You seem to enjoy writing reports. In that case, you can prepare another one, this time 100 pages long. The topic will be Ethics and Professional Conduct in Modern Society. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief. When you're finished, you'll deliver a presentation at our legal department's next meeting, I continued. You'll stand in front of your colleagues and read the entire thing out loud. Consider it part of your orientation. I gave her shoulder a light tap. So, how's that for a fair solution? Skylar's lips quivered, but she could not form a word. Alex, finally regaining his voice, stepped forward and bowed repeatedly. President Murphy, please, she's young and foolish. Show some mercy. I swear our firm will withdraw from the Southern District Industrial Park bidding right away. I glanced at him briefly. That's Caldwell's concern, not mine. Then I turned back to Skylar. As for her, She made her choice, and she'll deal with the consequences herself. I picked up my briefcase, my tone final. You have until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. If I don't see your apology letter by then, you'll have to face the results. At the doorway, I paused and looked back at her one last time. And the 100-page report, make sure it's handwritten. One error, even a single misplaced mark, and you'll start over. When I returned to Cognitech, a quiet satisfaction settled in my chest. Violet looked up from her desk as I entered. President Murphy, was the issue resolved? It's settled, I said, placing my briefcase down. Tell the legal department director to arrange a meeting next week. A new recruit will be giving her first presentation. Understood, she replied, then hesitated. Also, a partner from Caldwell Law Firm called. He's inviting you to dinner. Decline. He mentioned they're willing to make major concessions on the Southern District project. Then let the project team handle it, I said with a dismissive wave. Remind him that business remains business, and I don't mix personal affairs with work. Violet nodded and quietly stepped out of the office. I sat quietly for a while, watching the traffic flow beneath my office window. A calm, deep satisfaction spread through me, the kind that only comes when justice finally lands exactly where it should. Someone like Skylar couldn't be handled with simple revenge. You had to use her own rules as the weapon, turning them into a trap she couldn't escape. It wasn't about crushing her. It was about making her confront the emptiness behind that arrogance she called confidence. Letting her fall from her pedestal hurt far more than any punishment could. The next morning, just as I arrived at the office, a message from Miles popped up on my phone. He'd sent a screenshot of Skylar's public apology. In it, she admitted every lie, confessing that her reports were fabricated out of spite and aimed only to stir trouble. She apologized to me, to the neighborhood, and to everyone she'd dragged into her chaos. Miles's messages followed one after another, full of excitement. President Murphy, you're incredible. That girl packed up and left last night, tail between her legs. Everyone's praising you in the group chat. They're calling you the heroine who cleaned up the neighborhood. I smiled faintly, but didn't reply. At 10 o'clock, Violet knocked on my door. President Murphy, Skylar has arrived. Let her in. Skylar entered the office, clutching a thick stack of A4 papers. Her face was pale, her eyes ringed with exhaustion, and all her earlier arrogance had disappeared. She stepped forward, placed the stack on my desk, and bowed deeply. President Murphy, I'm sorry, she said, her voice hoarse and trembling. The report. I've finished it. I flipped through the handwritten pages. The writing was clean and careful, every line done with visible effort. Do you understand what you did wrong? I asked quietly. She hesitated, keeping her head low. After a long pause, she finally whispered, I used what I knew to hurt others. I was too proud. Her voice cracked slightly, and her eyes filled with tears. I've always been the top student. My parents kept telling me I was the best, that the world would bend if I followed the rules well enough. I believed that knowing the system meant I could control everything. She looked up, red-eyed and shaking. But after meeting you, I realized how wrong I was. President Murphy, I really understand now. Please give me another chance. She went on about her strict upbringing, about how her parents' pressure had shaped her arrogance, hoping for sympathy. But I simply watched her in silence. So, you tried to scam me and ruin my reputation because of your childhood? I said calmly, cutting her off. Skylar, don't insult me with excuses. Everyone has their past, but that doesn't free you from responsibility. You didn't misunderstand the rules. You just twisted them to suit yourself. And now that they've turned against you, you finally regret it. I shook my head. Too late. Her face turned pale. She had probably thought that a few tears might soften me. But she was wrong. I wasn't the forgiving type. President Murphy, she began, but I raised my hand slightly, stopping her. I'll keep the report, I said. And you'll still attend the legal department's meeting next week. As for whether you remain with the company, I let the words hang in the air, watching the faint spark of hope flicker in her eyes. That will depend on your performance once your probation ends. Skylar's face lit up with desperate relief, like someone who'd just been thrown a life preserver in open water. She nodded again and again. Thank you, President Murphy. I won't disappoint you, I promise. Leave, I said flatly. I was already tired of seeing her face. She stumbled as she bowed, nearly tripping over herself on her way out, as if she'd just been granted mercy from execution. Violet entered soon after, silently refilling my cup. "President Murphy," she said, puzzled, "you're really letting her walk away?" "Let her go." I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the steam brush my lips. "No." The curtains just risen. Leaning back in my chair, I gave my next order calmly. "Scan her 100-page report and send it to HR and all department heads. Title it, Exemplary Study on New Employee Ethics and Ideological Growth." Violet's eyes widened before she broke into laughter. "That's diabolical, President Murphy, but genius. To deal with someone unorthodox, you use unorthodox methods," I replied, my tone casual. A week later, during Cogniteca's legal department meeting, Skylar stood trembling under the bright conference lights. Her once proud posture had shrunk, and she clutched the thick report like it was the only thing holding her up. She began reading aloud, her voice shaking. "On the fundamental ethics and professional conduct of modern employees." The crowd tried to hold back snickers. Some whispered, others watched in open amusement. The former prodigy of the department now stood humiliated, a spectacle for all to see. I knew this day would carve itself into her memory. And this was just the beginning. During her probation, Skylar was buried under mountains of menial work. She was assigned the dullest files, the most unpleasant clients, and every unresolved case that no one else wanted. Under my quiet instruction, the legal department's director made sure of it. Still, Skylar endured it all. She arrived before everyone else, and was always the last to leave. She worked through weekends, never complained, convinced that perseverance would earn her a place here. How naive. 3 months later, HR summoned her for the final review. "Miss Skylar, after evaluation, your technical performance was satisfactory. However, your ethics and risk assessment score classify you as high risk," the HR officer said in a neutral tone. "The company has decided not to extend a permanent offer." I watched the scene unfold on my office monitor, a faint smile playing on my lips. Skylar went still, her world collapsing in that single phrase, "not hired." All her late nights, all her effort, all her hope, evaporated in an instant. She bolted out of HR and charged down the hall toward my office, eyes burning with fury. "Why, Ms. Murphy? Why won't you let me go?" My security guards intercepted her before she could reach the door. Her voice cracked, echoing through the corridor. I pressed the intercom button. "Skylar, I already gave you your chance. You failed the evaluation. Cognitec doesn't keep people like you." "Luna, you liar. You promised me," she screamed, slamming her fists against the door. "I worked myself to death for you, these 3 months. You used me." I kept my gaze on the monitor, my voice calm and even. "Used you? Skylar, you seem to have forgotten who tried to deceive whom first. The moment you teamed up with outsiders to trap me, your ending was already decided. I let you stay to teach you one lesson. The world doesn't owe you anything, and mercy isn't something you can demand." "You," she barked, fury cutting her speech short. "Leave now. Take what little dignity you have left before security has to remove you." I ended the call. The commotion outside dwindled to a few muffled sobs. Violet soon came in to tell me Skylar had officially resigned and left the company. I felt nothing. This was not vengeance, it was enforcement. Cogniteca's cornerstone was integrity, and someone who lacked it could become a danger once given power. I could not afford that. I assumed it was finished, until a week later my phone rang from an unknown number. A sharp, furious woman demanded, "Are you Luna Murphy?" "I am." "Who is this?" I asked. "I'm Skylar's mother," she spat. Her voice was a mix of outrage and hurt. "How dare you fire my daughter? She graduated from Vanderbilt, she's brilliant, and you had no right." I almost laughed. Mother and daughter, cut from the same cloth. "Madam, you misunderstand. Cognitec is not a shabby company, and I didn't fire your daughter. She failed to meet the company's standards." "That's a lie. You destroyed her future. I'll never forgive you," she shrieked, then switched to threats. "I have your address. I'll make sure you don't get away with this." She was probably referring to the rented apartment I owned. Instead of anger, I felt a small, cold smile. "Is that so?" I said quietly. "Then let me return the favor. You like reports, don't you? Maybe it's a family trait. I happen to have a risk assessment on your husband's company." I explained, calmly and without pause, that the dossier was extensive, backed by evidence of tax evasion, forged invoices, and unfair competition over the past 5 years. There was a stunned silence, then ragged breathing on the other end. "No, you're lying. "You're making this up," she cried. "Whether you believe me or not, you already know how the truth feels," I said, amused. "My legal team has notarized the documents. Tell me, shall I forward them to the tax authority and the economic investigation office, or shall we pretend they don't exist?" "Now it's your turn to decide," I added. After a long pause, her voice broke as she stammered. "What do you want?" Fear had replaced her anger. "I don't want anything," I replied lightly. "Just a reminder. Leave a margin for courtesy when you deal with people, because paths tend to cross again. If your daughter could not understand that, perhaps you will. Never test someone you cannot afford to offend. The consequences are rarely pleasant." I cut the call, convinced she knew the right move. From that day forward, my life returned to its usual calm. Skylar and her family vanished completely, leaving no trace in my world. I instructed my agent to put the now empty apartment back on the market. Violet looked puzzled. "President Murphy, you own so many properties. Why do you personally manage this one?" I smiled faintly, saying nothing. That apartment had been my first purchase, with the earnings from the very start of my business. It carried a personal history, witnessing my journey from a struggling beginner to the person I had become. Sometimes, tending to its small details gave me a sense of calm. It reminded me that no matter how high I rose, I was still human, still connected to my beginnings. "Think of it as market research," I told Violet. Soon, new tenants arrived, a young couple fresh out of college, accompanied by a small orange cat. The girl asked carefully, "Landlady, is it all right if we keep our cat? He's well-behaved, doesn't scratch, and is quiet at night." The boy added quickly, "We promise to keep everything clean and not cause any trouble." Looking at their nervous yet bright expressions, I saw echoes of my younger self. I smiled. "Of course. I like cats too. And as for the rent," I added, "I'll give you a 20% discount. Starting out isn't easy." The couple nearly jumped with joy, thanking me repeatedly. On contract signing day, the boy gifted a small pot of succulents he had grown, and the girl handed over a box of homemade cookies. They said it was a token of appreciation. I accepted, feeling a quiet warmth spread through me. After they left, I lingered alone in the apartment, reflecting. It was the same space, yet inhabited by different people, carrying new stories. Some saw it as a battlefield for rules and power, others as a home where fresh dreams began. Suddenly, I understood why I had never wanted to sell this apartment. It was like a mirror of humanity, kindness and selfishness, warmth and cruelty, more insightful than any market research could ever be. Life returned to its peaceful rhythm, and Skylar was nearly forgotten. But 6 months later, I stumbled upon a familiar name on an industry forum. The pinned post was titled, "In the Maze of Rules, How I Found My Lost Humanity," by Skylar Griffin. Out of curiosity, I clicked it. In a candid, almost confessional tone, she recounted that absurd chapter of her life, how she had meticulously schemed to extort a simple landlady, only to be completely outmaneuvered by me, the demon CEO. She even attached her 100-page citizen morality report. Skylar admitted that the 3 months of probation had been the darkest of her life, yet the most meaningful. For the first time, she understood what it meant to be ensnared by the same rules she once wielded to judge others. She reflected that laws and regulations were never meant to be twisted into weapons. The post ended with a single line that stayed with me. "I once believed I had mastered the rules of the world, but that woman taught me that above all rules, there is humanity." I lost, and I fully admit it. I have nothing left, yet it feels like I'm finally beginning to learn what it means to be a real person. Below Skylar's post, thousands of comments had already appeared. Some criticized her harshly, saying she deserved every consequence. Others said she had brought it on herself. Yet many were moved by her honesty. Someone who can admit their mistakes is rare. Keep it up. Reflecting like this shows growth beyond most people. Curious who the demon CEO is, she sounds remarkable. I read the comments, my thoughts tangled. I couldn't tell if Skylar's post was genuine or another carefully crafted performance. But it no longer mattered. Her life was her own to live. I closed the webpage and prepared to leave work. Just then, Violet knocked, smiling strangely. "President Murphy, Miss Griffin sent you something." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" Violet placed a neatly wrapped box on my desk. Inside, I found not a fancy gift, but a single strand of hair, sealed carefully in a clear evidence bag. Next to it was a card in Skylar's handwriting. President Murphy, this is my hair. A keepsake to remind me of who I am, where I came from, and the kind of person I should never become. Also, under your guidance, my parents' company has paid all back taxes and restructured successfully. They asked me to thank you for not destroying us completely. I held the card silently. A former wrongdoer thanking the one she had tried to harm. Sometimes reality was stranger than fiction. I didn't throw the hair away. I placed it with the purchase contract of my first apartment. One symbolized where I began, the other the strange chapter one had crossed on my path forward. A year later, Cognitech Technologies' Southern District Industrial Park finally opened. I walked onto the stage as CEO to give my speech. Among the crowd, I spotted a familiar figure, Skylar. She wore a graceful gown, her former arrogance replaced by calm humility. Beside her stood a middle-aged woman, clearly a company owner. Skylar had found a new place for herself. Our eyes met briefly. She raised her glass with a gentle smile, and I nodded in return. In that instant, all grudges seemed to fade. After the ceremony, Violet approached. President Murphy, Skylar asked me to pass along a message. What is it? She's doing well and has learned that real rules exist to protect the weak and hold the strong accountable, not to serve personal pride. I smiled. Looks like that 100-page report of mine wasn't wasted. On the way home, I got a call from the young couple renting my apartment. Luna, I'm pregnant, the girl exclaimed. We'd like to buy the apartment. Our baby should be born and grow up here. A warm, indescribable feeling spread through me. Of course, I said. You can pay in installments, no interest. The girl laughed with pure joy. I watched the city lights flash past the car window, reflecting on life. Being a landlord wasn't so bad after all. You meet all kinds of people. Hedgehogs like Skylar, cautious and combative, and sunflowers like the young couple, full of hope and warmth. Together, they create a real, complicated, and endlessly fascinating world. And I was simply an observer, sometimes a rule setter. And honestly, it felt quite good.